It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob, and welcome to my basement lair. Today we are doing State of the Dungeon address. This one is for the game Mighty Protectors. Yes. And this game was, or this night was primarily a bridge session, so the characters could get trained. There was a lot of it. This took place on the... Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am Rob. Welcome to my basement lair. Forgive the air conditioning running, but it is sweltering out there. This is my State of the Dungeon address for the game of Mighty Protectors that took place on June 3rd, 2021. And we unfortunately did not have all players in attendance. The player of Muscles was not here for reasons of exhaustion, so we instead forged on ahead. Basically, the most important thing was wrapping up GiftedCon. The group was given a little bit of extra time after we wrapped up the details. They found out that the Gifted were saved, that they had located in Berlin. They had a chance to talk to Veronica about a variety of things. But for the most part, they just kind of, we're moving on. So, not a lot got done there. They made sure that, for instance, Bulwark's sister would be able to get back. She's already being taken care of. And most of the pertinent details of what had happened were made as clear as possible. They still don't know the location of Adam, just that he flew off to the north, somewhere north of Irkutsk in the former Soviet Socialist Republic, whereupon he vanished off of all radars and scopes. So they don't know about that. They know his name, and whether or not he's actually Russian or anything like that, probably not. So it's a mystery. But he broke off the battle after killing several people, and after his box was gone, he couldn't drain them anymore. He just started wiping people out. There were a few fatalities, but by and large, most of the folks who went to GiftedCon did survive the onslaught. And the general frivolity of GiftedCon fell apart. Paradigm was killed in the conflict. And without him, there really wasn't much enthusiasm for it. No more could you have safe superhero battles, since the safeties were all off. And so they basically went their separate ways. A couple of less powerful ones stuck around, and some of the crowd, the fans, still stuck around, but many of the Gifted were gone. So, as for the group, they were ready to get out as quickly as possible, so they were given tickets so that they could go first thing the next day. Awesome! Everything is looking up for the team. Until there was a knock on their door. Who could this be? It's the law. The lady inspector from the Munich police came in, and she began to interrogate them about their involvement in the whole Adam thing. Well, for the most part, things were going pretty well. The group all managed to make cool tests not to indemnify themselves. Although Rook really didn't want to talk unless he had his lawyer, so they called Hank. Hank proceeded to blow his cool roll. So he actually got into some trouble. The luck was not nearly as bad with this session, though, as the prior session, so it was okay. The group basically were told not to leave, and they're like, nuts to that, we're getting out of here. So Hank's like, I'll stick around, make sure this all gets blown over, we'll be fine, you just do what you gotta do. So they decided they were gonna skedaddle. Now bear in mind, several of them are running around in 100-pound powered armor. Although their boarding passes are a special class that allows them to get on without question. Just skate through and onto the plane. Likewise, mussels require some extra accommodation, but again, you know, they're on a special flight that should be able to handle them. So they just have to get there without the police stopping them, because the police seem to be determined to do so. So the group decides, well, maybe we could do stealth. Bulwark is like, no, I'm not doing stealth. I'm a rock star here. I can walk down the streets. Besides which, there's people in costumes all over the place. GiftedCon is going on, despite the battle. So, we'll be fine. And they were. They basically still took some back streets. They didn't exactly go right up and down the boulevard, as they might have if they were, you know, trying to stay away from the police. But the pursuit really wasn't that determined, and they were able to make it to the airport. From there, they got in without too terribly much difficulty. I mean, they're kind of used to airports by now and stuff like that, and despite the fact that the local police had them as people of interest, it didn't stop them from getting on board this particular flight with the access they had. So they flew off. They were a little worried that the flight was going to get pulled around, you know, possibly like what happened in Bulgaria to the journalist who was anti-government who got arrested when they did exactly that, calling it a fake bomb threat. But they were able to make it without any great complications. This also was not nearly as memorable as their first flight together, whereupon you know, Muscles was having some costume issues, and the group was just kind of getting things straightened out. But now they're pros at this. So they flew into JFK. From there, they were met by a driver who took them in their specially modified vehicle back to the base. The driver was clearly not driving it. It was, of course, piloted by a chauffeur who handles most of their gigs. But this guy was, as Psyghost kind of probed, found out that he's a CIA agent, quite skilled, been with the service for quite a while, and now he's attached to this group as their stand-in driver. But also, you know, he's a decorated agent, so they're getting good service. So they get back to base and find out that base is nearly empty. All these superheroes they were gathering for the cause, all the various groups, most of them are gone. There's only a couple. They're met with Dr. Terrible, who still hasn't come up with a good name, who's busy gadgeteering, and they just rolled their eyes at him and kept going because, you know, he's kind of a goofball. The group does not have a great deal of respect for him. And quite honestly, he still hasn't worked on his image or, you know, found a real identity or anything yet, so he's just kind of there. The group was also kind of grateful not to have the ninja around, so they enjoyed that. But all of these different people that had been collected, all of these folks they'd run into, most of them were just not there. They met one gal who has stretching abilities, clearly not a beta level, but she is able to shake your hand from across the room, and those kind of specialized gifts do have their point, their purposes. Just, you know, not the kind of thing you need when you're having superpower battles. So she's not likely to be part of their squad anytime soon. So without Veronica around, because she wasn't, and she didn't show up for about, well, for several days, they set to, first of all, just settling in. The house had been built above the hill. So they went to go and check it out. They each have rooms. They're nice rooms, all things considered. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of permanent residents. Matter of fact, again, very few people were here. They do have staff, including a cook, including cleaning service. But for the most part, outside of having to deal with their own day-to-day stuff, it was pretty quiet. So the training montage began. After they caught up on news and everything that was going on, including trouble with the American government with Gifted, and yeah, everybody's worried about these huge superpower battles now. And after the mess in Munich, there's a lot of people who are kind of having a more jaundiced eye towards the idea of having these conventions and gatherings of superpowered individuals, because trouble seems to follow them. Strange but true. But they all began their training. So this is the time when we passed around the book and let everybody consider what they wanted to start diverging their characters and exploring different powers, some in very radically different ways from what you might expect. For instance, Cyghost has now developed the ability to completely separate her astral self from her physical body, but still have an animating conscience in both. Effectively, a limited version of duplication. One astral, one not. So she's her own best friend, because she can constantly keep tabs on herself while she's astral, and her physical body can do all the physical things that are needed to do. So it's different, but it's a cool ability. Again, speaks to the flexibility of the Mighty Protectors system. Of course, Sentinel became one with the Speed Force. He has all kinds of super speed, different abilities. His actual land speed has increased. He, of course, is able to move at a faster altered rate. So, yeah, he is not the Flash, but he's working on it. He's also up to his, I believe he is up to his repulsors, and so he's got a lot of neat things that he can pull off. Bulwark was all about working on gadgeteering. He now has an arsenal of different gadgets, and his high intelligence has allowed him to make all kinds of nifty things. He found out how flexible that power set can be, and he is charging in. He also got rid of that pesky problem where he couldn't use his density increase and flight at the same time. That was a pricey one to buy off, but now he can actually fly and transform himself into something super dense and fly through things, which that's going to be exploited. I can just tell. That's gonna be real special. And Rook came up with some ideas on how he can use his gravity control. For one thing, he can now make a larger area that he can put crippling amounts of gravity into, so he can drop groups of people at a time and just knock them out or incapacitate them and move on. He actually is going to be really good at putting down mooks and common people. May not be incredibly useful in, again, super powered people who have super strength, but almost everybody else can be pretty nasty. And now that's in an area effect, it's going to be really hard to avoid that for some of the less physically adept opponents they may face. So, could be really interesting, honestly. So the group all came in with their shiny new abilities, powers that they had been working on, and Veronica came home. And they all got to talk with her. Well, she basically set them straight with what was going on in the world. They speculated a bit about Clayton and what happened there with Clayton deflating in their very arms as they were coming back. That was Lord Warbridge, or his actual name, Clayton, her husband. She doesn't think he's dead, but you know, she's almost certain he's not dead, but she doesn't know how she's been blocked off from his ability. She hasn't been able to look over her shoulder at his book for weeks. So she figured he was staying away from it, but he may have found a way to block her ability. May have something to do with that spaceship they found that version of him on. Possibly, we don't know. Also, she brought to light some of the various after actions from Munich. Who made it, who didn't. Some of the different after effects that are going on within the intelligence community that she is a part of, and finding out how the different waves of not only the fact that superpowered people exist, but how they're being used in different governments. She's keeping her eyes on that very carefully. But for the group, she found something special. Their next assignment is going to be to try to, well, try to deal with a strange architectural formation. In the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, a pair of tall ziggurats have suddenly appeared in an area that no anthropology experts or archaeologists have really ever found any ruins or any reason to believe that these might have been raised up from the ground. They just appear to be there. And they have kind of carved faces and images on them that are reminiscent of the Aztecs, Incans. But there's nobody there. They just suddenly appeared. And at the site, radio signals, cell phones are blocked. Now, they've seen this kind of an effect before, but no idea what's causing it. So they are being basically taken to this place to check it out, because their skill set might actually give them a chance to succeed, where the Mexican government has just simply not been able to. And they have the full cooperation of the Mexican government to research this and find out what's going on. If it's sinister, put a stop to it. And if it's not, then report back to whatever it is. So this seemed like it's something in their wheelhouse. So the team got all packed up, ready to go. And they were then sent to straight to the coast, where they were picked up by a small craft and brought on board a large cruiser, where they met Commander Williams, who was in charge. And he wasn't the captain of the ship, but he was high enough ranking to make sure that everything went smoothly for this trip and that the ship could go at full speed to get them there. There must have been some reason why they didn't fly, which would have been faster, but they got a nice sea voyage. They were told that they couldn't vouch for all the different crew possibly causing trouble, so they should probably try to stay to themselves. They'll be as comfortable as the Navy can provide them, which was true. They did end up with a nice lounge, workout area, workshop, the things they basically needed, but not a great deal of freedom. They got to sleep in quite a bit, but for the most part, they ate okay. They entertained themselves as they traveled, and eventually, when we stopped, they were there near the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. So they are ready to be inserted by Chinook helicopter, which is a primitive enough craft that any onboard systems shouldn't be negatively impacted by any kind of signal problems. And also, to make things just that much more fun, Dr. Terrible has been assigned to join them. Hopefully he'll get it. He has been gadgeteering like mad, and the group was somewhat impressed when they found out that he had made powered armor for himself, that he was able to wear, walk around in, and he could transform it into a small little Lakar and drive around in it. It's not quite Transformers, but they of course were like, why didn't you get a real vehicle? Why did you put armor on it? And he cited that he just didn't have the resources to do all of that. But it works, and it can disassemble itself, wrap itself around him for armor, and it does have guns. So yeah, his ability can be kind of flexible when he's not being a goof. So we'll see what happens. That'll be for the next session. Thank you for joining me. This has been my State of the Dungeon address. Until next time, true believers, we'll see you that next time. Be safe, roll dice, play games, have fun. Farewell.